On July 18th, 2019, Kyoto Animation's first building faced one of the worst disasters in Japan's history, arguably the worst mass murder since World War II. With 34 people dead and about 35 injured, it's quite easily the most terrifying thing to happen to the anime industry, well, ever. To see such a relatively small niche community that's made by fans and for fans, brought to mainstream attention in quite honestly the worst way possible, it's just really sad to me. So I felt the best course of action in response would be to do things the only way I know how. To take a look at Kyoto Animation's work, in particular the very first one they've made, Munto, and try to figure out what they were trying to communicate with it, as well as to see, how that story relates to Kyoto Animation's approaches as a studio. Now, prior to Munto, Kyoto Animation had collaborated with other studios on works such as the Inuyasha movies, the Nurse Witch Komugi-chan OVAs, which were a set of spin-off OVAs related to Komugi from Soul Taker, which were pretty fun OVAs. Then also, one of the other big works that they had done was, back in 1991, they did a short 15-minute OVA for Happy Science. But Munto was really the first thing they did that kickstarted their legacy of putting their own solo productions out each and every year, and even so it goes relatively ignored by a lot of Kyoto Animation fans and a lot of anime fans in general, so I really just want to give it a fair shake here. Now, I like to divide Munto into 3 different parts because it started initially as 2 OVAs, one that came out in 2003, and then the other that came out in 2005. But then in 2009, they readapted the 2 OVAs into a TV series and continued the story 3 episodes longer. And then also, after that, they released a compilation movie which sort of adapts the parts that the other 2 OVAs didn't adapt from the TV series. But I will be personally taking a look at Munto TV just to get a whole picture of the story. Now, the backdrop of Munto starts out with these 2 different beings, the humans and the heavenly beings. The humans created this power source called Octo, which represents their emotions. And the heavenly beings were able to manifest this power and utilize it to create pretty much anything they desire. However, once this power came into their hands, they used it to destroy, and it led to the demise of human civilization. They then became very greedy after that, and went to other dimensions to deplete those humans of Octo. Their kingdom expanded more and more as the Octo source grew larger and larger, and they ended up separating themselves from the people of Earth. However, the humans that they had defeated initially returned and waged war on those heavenly beings over the Octo, which led to the heavenly beings closing themselves in a parallel dimension and separating Octo from their lives. That created the Calamitous Day, in which all of the pillars connecting the 2 worlds fell, causing great destruction. But now, without any Octo, the Heavenly Kingdom started separating themselves from each other and waging war on each other. After all, this world needs Octo to continue floating in the sky since it was created from those human emotions. Without any, it would crash and fall to the Earth, destroying both worlds. And that's where the Magical Kingdom comes in, of which Munto is king. He wishes to return to Earth and unite with a middle schooler named Yumemi and save both kingdoms in the process. But the other people in charge view this as a horrible idea after what happened last time, and think that uniting with humans could only cause trouble. One of the major themes in this first story is about asking deep within yourself what exactly you can do to help others and to better yourself. Yumemi is faced with this dilemma in her life because she's been able to see this kingdom ever since she was 5 years old, but no one else has ever been able to see it, and very few people even bother to believe her. That's where her 2 friends come in, Susume and Ichiko, who both really try their best to be supportive of her and to understand her. Susume in particular, she's very important because she's a prime example of someone who helps others without question. When Yumemi was sick in bed and she couldn't go on a class trip, both of her family and classmates were away, but Suzume was the one who walked kilometers back to Yumemi's house from the trip just to cheer her up. And this all culminates into one of the major conflicts in the first arc, since Suzume grows to fall in love with a boy named Kazuya, and Kazuya is viewed as nothing but a burden to others. He gets into fights all the time, and has never really felt any close relationship to anyone else because his parents haven't lived with him ever since he was a little kid. He contemplated drowning himself in the river, but Suzume reached out to him and stopped him. She showed compassion to someone who was viewed in a poor light by society, and as a result, he improved himself because of it. But even with this in mind, even with his strong desire to change, society still treats him the same way, and they still view him as a delinquent, so that kind of stunts his development. That's why the two want to do something really crazy and outlandish, not only to prove to everyone that Kazuya has changed, but also to prove how much Suzume's actions mean to him, and to prove their marriage, as he says. And so, Yumemi sees Suzume's actions, she sees her selflessness, sees her somewhat reckless and admittedly childish actions, but still wants to be able to capture that within herself. The only solutions that she's provided with by authority figures like her own mother are to study hard since she's only a kid. In general, the series looks down on those simple solutions since they aren't really doing anything for others in that moment. Sure, maybe if she studies hard, that work will pay off when she's older, and she'll be able to help them then, but what can she do now? Just prepare to help people later? It's not really a solution. And that's weirdly similar to something that is mentioned in regards to the heavenly beings. How, when they were cut off from Octo, they lived humbly in order to prevent a disaster. However, once again, living humbly, while certainly not a bad thing, it doesn't really do anything to help those that have been wronged. So this is where Munto comes in. This island, this childish illusion that people have laughed at all this time, is giving Yumemi an opportunity to do something far greater and to help others. She might be able to become more like Suzume through this. By reuniting with Munto and lending him her Octo, she'll be able to prevent this heavenly world from crashing down. But the only thing that's really stopping her throughout this first arc is her own wavering heart. She lacks the self-confidence and the belief that this truly has any meaning. This all ends up changing when Suzume and Kazuya prove their marriage by crossing the river where they first met. They decide to leave school and commit to it, and a bunch of teachers follow them, as well as Yumemi and Ichiko. The couple are told to swim back and to give up by the teachers, yet they still persist. As this is going on, Munto continues to fight in his world against those trying to stop him from uniting with Yumemi. After all, it's dangerous, it's not worth it, it's seemingly childish and stupid. But it's also a dream, thus it's worth pursuing. While Kazuya and Suzume face some troubles in trying to cross the river, they end up making it to the other side, with the encouragement of their classmates who now left school to go watch them. And right after this happens, two big things occur. The island that was once only visible to Yumemi now becomes visible to everyone else, and the other thing is that Munto connects with Yumemi. After the two connect, Yumemi now has the confidence to combine her powers with Munto and to save the world. And save the world they do. Just going to show that Yumemi was capable of something she could find in Suzume, but not in herself. Not only that, but this weird illusion, this thing that Yumemi was viewed as dumb for believing in, is now seen by everyone else and they're able to believe her too. And this leads us into the second part of the story, which takes place roughly a year and a half after the events of the first one. In spite of both Munto and Yumemi joining together and thus bringing Octo back into Munto's world, it was more of a temporary solution to the problem rather than a permanent one. The Octo supply has yet to really fully replenish itself, since the two worlds have yet to join together, they're still separate. So Munto yet again needs to reunite with Yumemi, but there's one thing stopping him this time. When the two joined together in the first part, Munto was able to see visions of what Yumemi went through as a child and feel her own pain. He saw how vulnerable she was, and at the same time he also showed her his own vulnerabilities. So he's afraid that because she is so vulnerable, should they reunite again, it would destroy her. There's also the people in power, who have yet to truly change their beliefs on things. Sure, they now understand that joining together won't destroy the world or anything, but there's still this sense of pride to how they approach things. This is where a character like Guntarl comes in, where he commands the Magical Kingdom's army and wants to take the Octo back by force. After all, Munto's approach in the first part was to try to inspire Yumemi and give her confidence in those illusions. But since that approach was viewed as something that didn't really solve the problem by the Elders, Guntarl believes that his more aggressive, forceful approach is one that will actually solve the problem this time. Another person who comes into question is Gas, the Guardian of Time, or as he's called, the Outsider. His job is basically to protect the border between the two dimensions, and in the first part of the story, he actually lets Munto go to Earth in order to join with Yumemi, knowing that this is the only logical course of action in order to prevent great destruction. In the second part, he faces the consequences of those actions, now cursed with a mark that will lead to his demise. But even so, he still dreams. Guntarl may promise Gas order, however, at what cost? This isn't just about Octo, and Gas understands that, yet it's completely lost on Guntarl. And so Gas gives some of his power to Munto, even though it'll end up destroying Gas in the end, as a means of pushing Munto forward and getting him to do what he truly dreams of doing, in spite of his own fears. Now, ever since the events of the first part happened, Yumemi has been staring outside the window waiting for Munto to return. Much like Munto's world, that one instance was just a temporary solution to her problem. Her obsession has been consuming her life, and Yumemi keeps getting these dreams and these visions of it all the time, much to the sadness of Ichiko. After all, Ichiko has tried her best to support her friend and to believe her, but there's only so much she can do. She doesn't completely understand what Yumemi went through, and so it almost feels as if the two are on separate wavelengths, so to speak. In a way, Ichiko is afraid that Yumemi will consistently dream of this world that she can't reach, and abandon her friends as a result. So, as a means to try to help Yumemi and get her mind off of what's been going on, she invites her to the amusement park. However, even there, just the littlest of things like a balloon floating up into the sky is enough to remind her, and all of this comes together when Guntarl's forces start attacking Earth. Yumemi runs and takes action, ending up on the edge of a destroyed Ferris wheel. She ends up being sandwiched between both Ichiko and Munto, who followed her over there, both of whom want her to just return out of fear of what will happen to her. Interestingly enough, where Ichiko is standing, it resembles almost gears in a clock, as if to say, this is the place where all of time and space are linked together. Munto ends up having a change of heart and getting over his fears after Yumemi's words bring him greater confidence. This is not much different from how his words in the first part helped give Yumemi confidence. And so the two join together, space-time is merged, and that leads it to snow. The second OVA stops at this point, however, the TV series continues from here, in what I'd consider to be the third part, wherein Yumemi enters the Heavenly Kingdom in order to turn the light connecting the two worlds into a solid entity, thus restoring the flow of Octo to how it once was. However, there are a few things standing in their way. There's Gridori, who hasn't really played a huge role in the story up to this point. However, he's a good representation of the self-righteous attitude that many of the people in power hold. He believes that Munto is unfit to be a king because Munto wants to compromise with the humans of Earth. All Gridori desires is for his own abilities to be recognized in the same way Munto's are, but will go forth and tear other people down to do it. His response to his own insecurities is destruction, without any other reason to fight. Unlike Munto, who fights to protect and to move things forward, Gridori fights to bring things back to the status quo of what got them into this mess in the first place. I mean, he's even dressed up as like an old school tribal barbarian, and he turns into this character that resembles Munto, almost as if to consider him sort of the opposite of Munto in a way. Which makes things all the better when Gas sacrifices himself in order to defeat Gridori, as if to imply that, in this new world that Munto will create, there won't be any need for someone to guard the two worlds, because those two worlds will become one. And it also signals a death of Gridori's old school ideas. After that happens, things die down, at least for now, but there's still some problems. Firstly, while the elders are a lot more keen on the idea of ending all the fighting between nations and trying to unite everybody since Yumemi arrives in the world, Gintaril is still very much stuck in his ways. There's also Yumemi herself, who's still unsure of what exactly to do. Is her chasing this world the correct thing when the people of the magical kingdom have made so many mistakes? To that, the answer is yes, because as Munto states, while the past can't be changed, the people can change. There's also the fact that while she does leave Earth in order to save the world, she abandons her friends to do so. This is made evident when she sees the vision of Ichiko and Suzume, who are still waiting for her on the Ferris wheel, and haven't abandoned her in spite of everyone else having left. So she uses her new powers to summon them and to save them when they're about to fall off. And the fact that they do travel to this world, I find to be very important, for reasons that I'll explain a little later. So this ends up leading into the final battle against Gintaril right by that Pillar of Light. And Gintaril's still very confident that Munto is incapable of doing anything to stop this destruction. Everyone else has kinda moved on and moved forward, yet here Gintaril is, and he doesn't really view them as people, rather just as sources for Octo. He's actually very similar to Gridori in that sense, but unlike Gridori, he's very afraid of what Yumemi's power is capable of. This is notable when Yumemi stands up to him and goes to save her friends, which is a big moment for her in terms of development. Gintaril tries to crystallize Yumemi in order to keep her powers in check, because he's scared of them. However, she ends up breaking through the crystals, freezing her, and even a simple look of confidence in the face of adversity is enough for Gintaril to be deeply afraid. All he can do is just sit and cower while the three girls actually manage to take action. Now, I had mentioned before that them traveling to this world was important, and it's for a reason explained right at this point in the story. Yumemi shows that protecting the world isn't something only she is capable of, but rather it's something that anybody can do. Much like Yumemi, both Ichiko and Suzume have Octo within them. Things like sacrifices and leaving anybody behind, it's all unnecessary. And so, the girls and Munto join together, Munto links with Yumemi, and the two worlds now become one. From now on, the two parties, both humans and heavenly beings, will now work together. And Munto even takes time to visit Yumemi once more after all that has come and gone. Now, before I wrap things up, I believe this is a very interesting work not only for what I've mentioned throughout this video, but also how it applies to Kyoto Animation's approach as a studio. One of the major things this series values is modesty and not looking down on others. Munto is a king of this great kingdom, but he still goes down to Earth to unite with an average teenage girl. In a way, being humble is a very important principle to Kyoto Animation, since I'd argue they're a very modest studio in spite of their great success. While most anime studios are in Tokyo, Kyoto Animation is, well, in Kyoto. They don't put out a ton of projects each year, and even if they do put out a few projects, they usually aren't long projects. Instead, they value putting a lot of love and care into the couple of projects they put out each year. There's also this idea of them honing in on these young, less experienced talents and bringing them up to great success, much like how Munto comes down to Earth to bring Yumemi to great success, and how Yumemi in turn later is able to bring Munto up to great success. The people who work at Kyoto Animation a lot of times too, they tend to stay there for a long time, so there is this sense of loyalty to it. There's also this idea in Munto of the value of youth and the value of believing in something in spite of it coming off as childish. The adults in Munto are viewed as these people who play too close to the books, and come off as more discouraging than encouraging. This is really relevant to the process of animation, since it's all about not taking the pre-established path in life, and sort of remaining in touch with that childish side of oneself. It sort of has this power to unite people of all different backgrounds and all different beliefs, creating these imaginative worlds and scenarios that inspire others. And I can say for certain that Kyoto Animation has inspired a lot of people with their works. And I'm confident that in spite of what hardships they have faced and they're still facing, they will continue to inspire people in the future, both with their old works as well as with their new works. Thank you for watching.